Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Love Punch. Today, I have got a soul brother on the decks with us today. And Adam and I actually connected at a workshop a couple years ago that we were both attending. And I was really super drawn to just his authenticity and the way in which he holds space for people. So let me tell you a little bit about Adam. Adam Roa is a transformational artist who is committed to using creative energy to catalyze change on the planet. A modern day Renaissance man, Adam is constantly creating a variety of artistic projects, including conscious film, music, and spoken word poetry. On a quest to discover what it means to be an empowered man in today's world, he is known for sharing his journey with radical authenticity on social media, as well as his podcast, The Deep Dive, which, FYI, go subscribe now. So without further ado, hello, Adam, and welcome to Love Punch.
Thank you for having me, Rubia. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm super excited. I woke up excited, first of all, because I was like, ooh, this is going to be a good episode where we're going to dive deep because I've got Adam and he'll go there.
There's no holds barred. We are going to go wherever this wants to go.
Yeah. So we had briefly chatted about sort of what is on the top of your mind right now. And you shared male and feminine energies, masculine and feminine energies. And it's really interesting because I myself have been going through this awakening of realizing kind of where I naturally lean into and understanding my seasons of masculine and feminine, but also we're kind of in this space in our physical environment where so much of this energy is coming to the surface, and it's like it wants to be discussed, it wants to be understood. At least that's how I'm feeling. And so I'm wondering for you, why does this feel like such a hot topic right now? Why does it feel like something that you have this desire to speak about?
Well, the most obvious reason for me right now is the fact that I feel like I've been asked to by higher self, intuition, spirit, God, source, Allah, like whatever word you want to use to describe it. I feel like a higher power is asking me to, and I have mutually agreed to part ways with the love of my life, essentially the woman I've spent the last 10 years in a committed monogamous relationship with, and who I thought we were actually planning on having children this year, getting pregnant at the end of this year. And now we're splitting up and going separate ways. And the primary reason we're doing that from my end is because I realized that my healthy relationship to the feminine was entirely encapsulated in my relationship with her. And that when I step outside the container of that relationship, there's so much of me as a man that has not actually been looked at in a decade. And I want to look at that. And as I start looking at these things, I'm noticing how many other men can relate to what I'm going through, and how many women are actually experiencing their own version of the same thing. Because what we're seeing on the planet right now is this renegotiation of masculine and feminine energy. And that's both internally and externally. And so seeing that, and seeing things like the Me Too movement and the men going their own way movement, and all of these symptoms of what's happening on the energetic plane is, there's no time but now. We're in it. It's happening. So that's why I'm passionate about lending my voice to it. And more importantly, not from a teaching standpoint, but from I'm jumping in the swimming pool with everyone else. I'm leaving the safety of my relationship where I could just hide out and like be my version that I've been for the last 10 years. Instead, I want to go and understand on the ground level. And so there's nothing more important to me right now than that, because it's the reason why I'm leaving my relationship.
So it sounds to me like it's a path of a deeper sense of self-discovery that you're on. And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you're diving more into that. And there's like this yearning to really connect to those parts of you that perhaps you haven't connected to or even understand are there.
Yeah, 100%. The journey of self-discovery, I think that right now, we're always on a journey of self-discovery.
Always.
I think right now we're seeing a paradigm shift. We're in the midst of an accelerated timeline where women are claiming their voice and claiming their empowerment in a really beautiful way. And because that energetic is shifting, everything that's connected to that gets to shift as well. And that includes how men show up in the world. And how do we hold the space for women to step into their queen without disempowering the king self inside each of us as men? And how do we avoid allowing our wounding around our masculine to be projected back to us through wounded aspects of the feminine, who once they taste this intoxicating nature of power and having that voice, I see some of that falling into old patterns that men have played out for centuries. And so there's a renegotiation happening. And I think it's important for people who are aware that it's happening to do their best to understand it. And so I'm coming from this space of, I don't want to teach anything. I don't actually know. I don't have the answers here, but I am willing to get in it and talk about the experience along the way.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about you, is that you're willing to like leap first, but not just wait until you're done to then quote unquote teach, but actually speak about it as you're going through it, which I feel creates a deeper connection with your audience and those around you, because they feel like they're in it with you. And not only that, they feel like they're almost validated for what they're going through, because so many people are going through similar experiences like you described. And these experiences are paralleled. Like, we're all kind of going through this really crazy time where there's a lot of intensified emotions, there's a lot of upheaval, and there's a lot of call for deeper evolution within ourselves. And so much of that has to do with our own personal energies and how we choose to show up in this world. You know, it's like what I say, who we be. And it's like, who are we being in any given moment, and what energies are we leaning into, and what is our perception of these energies, right? There's like this misconception of what these energies are. People argue over it, and they think that feminine equates to female and masculine equates to male, but that's not the case. And each energy, they each have their gifts. And I love how you said queen, because, you know, the feminine energy, yes, is so much of that queen, which is empowering, but the masculine energy is so much of the king, which is empowering. How can we then live in a world and in a time where we can allow ourselves to be kings and queens without having to sacrifice one for the other?
Right. Yeah. How do we build each other up? You know, like, how do we create this dynamic where the empowerment, the expansion, the growth of any one energy leads to the growth of the other? And so we can talk about the male and female because it's most often exhibited that way when we talk about masculine and feminine energy. But I want people to listening to this to be aware that inside each and every one of us, we have masculine and feminine energy.
Yes.
You may express it more, like I express my masculine energy more. And part of that is because I am a male, and that is a huge tendency. And a part of that is the nurturing of how I grew up in the household I grew up in. Part of that is the societal conditioning, which seems to be set up in a way that rewards masculine energy more than feminine energy. All of those play into it. And it's all an external reflection of what's going on internally. And so there's a rising feminine empowerment. And that means that the feminine in me as well is also rising. And so if I have a unhealthy relationship to the feminine externally, that's a direct representation of an unhealthy relationship to the feminine that's inside of me. And that's why at the end of the day, it still starts with personal growth and the exploration of self and the healing of our own aspects that are not currently in wholeness.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I'm breathing into that because I love that you just expressed that, and the unhealthy relationships that we have with these energies. It's so important to awaken to that, to be aware of that, by first even just asking the question, what is my relationship with this energy?
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, it was I had this idea of what feminine energy was and this idea of what masculine energy was because I had such polar opposite parents.
Yeah.
And so much of this comes from our upbringing. And now, you know, in my almost, I can't believe I'm saying this, almost 40, I'm now learning to master, like, not even master, I'm now learning to like create my own definitions, but not only that, but my own healthy relationships and understanding of like, it's okay to drop into my masculine. It's okay to drop into my feminine. There is a season for masculine. There's a season for feminine. And also, when I bring that into my relationship at home, how do I drop into it in a way that also honors my partner?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one. And part of that has to do with uh, a lot of us haven't experienced full empowerment before. And so
Mm-hmm.
not having experienced it before, when we taste it, there's a, well, how do I be with this now?
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it when I started training mixed martial arts, actually. So I was a wrestler in high school at a decently high level. And then when I got into college, I didn't want to wrestle anymore, but I started doing mixed martial arts and thought actually that I was going to pursue a semi-career in cage fighting. UFC.
Oh shit, you learn something new about your friends all the time.
Yeah, so that was what I was doing in college until I decided that I wanted to move out to Los Angeles and pursue an acting career. And in training, my friend split his eyelid open and needed stitches just with gloves and mouthpiece. And I said, "Oh, I don't want to get hit in the face anymore."
Right.
And the tangent. Um, the point is, when I first started the mixed martial arts, there was an aspect of me that hadn't yet been brought into wholeness, which was this little late blooming Napoleon complex version of myself that had something to prove. And
Mm-hmm.
so I wanted to fight everybody. And I didn't actually do it, but I would go out with my friends, and at the time I was doing a lot of drinking, and
Mm-hmm.
just not back down in any way and be almost antagonizing in certain aspects. Like if someone I felt was rude, say something, whereas before
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'd just be like, I'm just going to leave that, because I was willing and like looking to prove something. And then when I actually became embodied in the training, meaning essentially once I learned how to actually fight,
Mm-hmm.
I no longer had a desire to fight anyone. I realized how easily you could seriously hurt someone. I didn't feel the need to prove anything anymore. I just knew it. It was embodied in me. It's like I can handle myself. That's what I see happening in a different way on the planet right now, where when people get the taste of empowerment,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a now I need to prove that I'm powerful. I need to show something. I need to
Mm-hmm.
actually show something. And then after being with it for a while longer, then it's like, oh, I actually don't need to prove it because that power is in me. I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. And that's the shift that I hope we go into as a collective. I
Mm-hmm.
hope that both men and women can shift into the knowing of their power instead of the needing to prove of their power.
Mm. Why is it that we as a society always feel a need to fucking prove shit to everyone and anyone, including ourselves?
It's that fake it till you make it thing, right?
Yeah.
It's this it's the ego mind wanting to protect itself.
Mm-hmm.
It very much is just this part of us that if we say it loud enough,
Mm-hmm.
we'll believe it.
Yeah. And we're in the middle of that. You know, for anyone, it's undeniable. If you're in the online space, it's undeniable how many people are really rising up and finding their true voice. and using it for what feels like energetically the first time, like tapping into their throat chakras, activating their truth and using it. And when you're in that space of like finally finding or connecting to that ability to use it, there is a sense of freedom that comes from it. And then there's a sense of like, I can't shut up. Like, I just have to keep going. I just have to keep proving this to myself. It's this complete rebirth. And I feel like the world is at this point right now, which is why there's so many high emotions and so many intensified emotions and what feels like upheaval, when in the midst of it is like this deep, beautiful evolution that is actually taking place. Because I believe for far too long, our voices have been repressed and we've been too disconnected from our truth. And now we are coming back to our truth and reconnecting to our energies. And it feels really good. But what do we do with that? When you've never felt that before, it's like, what do you do with that? You know what I mean?
100%. But you're seeing it happen all over the globe, right?
Yep.
So women just gained the right to drive in Saudi Arabia. Did you see that?
No, then that's fucking crazy.
For the very first time, that legally
Wow.
they're now allowed to drive, and it's a big deal, as you can imagine, especially in a part of the world where women are perhaps silenced more than anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see something like that is such an indication of the growth that we are having as a society, globally, as a global citizenship. And at the same time, we're seeing some really crazy things happening in the other direction where in order to have things have fairness, for example, you see Ivy League schools like a Harvard who are essentially making it harder for Asian Americans to get into the school because if they just did it blindly without taking race into consideration, you would have a statistically higher number of Asian Americans in Harvard than are currently there, just based on SAT scores and all the other evaluations and stuff like that. So what you have is a discrimination against Asian Americans happening with the energetics of, this is for equality and diversity. So I get where the heart is behind it, but it's leading to people who worked their ass off in school. And as an Asian American, like, this hits close to home, but worked their ass off in school, who are now being discriminated against, and it's working against them in a way. And so I think that we're seeing shifts just on all sides. And where I'm coming from with this is, I don't know the answers. I don't have them. And I put out a post on social media about this recently, Ruby, where I said, I don't want people to see me as a teacher any longer. I'm disassociating myself as like a coach, because I recognize how much of me still doesn't know. And when you take the label of coach or teacher or whatever, I've seen people look at me like I do have the answers. And instead, I want to be looked at as someone who's willing to go and explore it, which is where the artist comes in, and tell that story through my art and with my voice. And I think that's the healthy approach. I think that if all of us were to just simply say, I have no fucking idea, I don't know, let's have a conversation about this, then we can come to the table in a healthy way. The reason why conversations aren't able to be had between like the far left and the far right and the political and like gun control and the building of the wall and all this stuff, where people aren't even actually talking about the issues. Now they're just divided. They've drawn lines in the sand and they're saying, nope, not even going to listen to it, because they believe that they know. And if they said, oh, I have no idea, and the person on the other side of the line said, I have no idea either, they could go, okay, well, let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah. So funny enough, I literally, right before we got on this recording, I literally just recorded an episode that was entitled, We're Not Meant to Know Everything. And I love that you just went there, because I feel like that is like an ideology that is plaguing, especially the coaching world, especially the world of personal development. It's like people are are putting themselves on pedestals and fighting to become experts, fighting to achieve quote unquote mastery.
Yeah.
When really, the way I see it, it's impossible to master anything because everything in our world is constantly evolving, including ourselves. So if you then put a title on yourself to say you're a master of something or an expert of something, or you know everything, you have all the answers, then what you're actually implying is that you've stunted your own growth and your own evolution because you're refusing to see anything else. And we're seeing that demonstrated, just like you said, in politics. We're seeing that demonstrated everywhere worldwide. And there's a reason for it. I think that this is the era where we need to see the duality and the polarity that exists in our planet. Like that needs to be seen. And it needs to be experienced in order for us to then say, oh yeah, shit, this exists. How do we move forward from here? How do we evolve from here?
Yeah. And there's a view I have on this, which, a lot of people disagree with, which
Bring
is,
it.
I actually don't believe that pain is necessary for growth. But we have a society that's built on no pain, no gain.
Right.
Literally, strive and grind, no pain, no gain. What doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. All of these euphemisms that tell us you want pain because it will lead to your growth. Because that's so ingrained in our collective consciousness, yes, I agree with what you just said. We get to look at the duality, we get to look at the suffering, we get to look at the pain that's happening on this planet and say, okay, time to grow and evolve beyond this right now and integrate it back into wholeness. And I think that once we are aware of it, once we're aware of it, we can shift and allow love to guide us. And we don't have to hold on to this suffering, because part of what I think is going on right now is we are holding on to the idea that the pain is good for us. On some unconscious level, the pain will lead to the gain. We are forged in the fire. I can go on and on and on because I've thought about this a lot. Essentially, it's a mindset that pain is good. At the end of the day, that's what it boils down to. Pain is good. It'll lead to your growth. And if we hold on to that and don't accept the fact that, yes, there's a difference from choosing to learn from the pain that shows up and choosing the pain to show up so that we can learn. Those are they're nuanced differences, but they're very, very different. And when we can accept that we don't need the pain, we're going to start to release a lot of it. And we're going to find other ways to catalyze our evolution on this planet.
I love that you brought that point up, because it is something that is very much ingrained in our minds. I mean, I think for many of us, our parents' generations, they were the ones who were really, especially if you come from immigrant families, especially. Yeah, we both have our hands raised.
And we've both been through our share of traumas.
Right. And it's because our parents had this notion of like, I'm moving here from like nothing. So I got to build something for my family. And so it's that no pain, no gain, work hard. My dad he had a major heart attack a few years ago, and he's still working now and just achieving like his biggest dream in life. And he's not going to stop. Like he just won't stop. And that's something I both deeply admire in him, because that's what I've been raised to see and believe. And it's also something that I'm like, I never want to be like that, because it's something that I'm unpacking in my own personal evolution. So I love that you brought that up. And I think that if people really just gave themselves the space to reflect on their lives and think about the shifts that they've made, we can all pinpoint at some point in our lives when we've made a shift without the pain, when we've come to a realization on our own without being instigated or triggered by a painful experience or a wound. Like we've all gone through that, but why aren't we focusing on that? Why is it the pain that we feel like the pain needs to drive us?
Well, there's a lot of biological reasons for that, right? And evolutionary, psychological reasons for that. I think one aspect of what we're talking about is designing a new way of being human. I think that we are especially in the new age esoteric spiritual communities where a lot of people's cosmic connection is coming online, you're seeing this desire for a higher frequency way of existing, a way of being. And that's possible. And what that would require is a shifting of biological tendencies through, they say it's like 3 generations or something, but essentially as we shift it and then we raise people, the next generation to live that new version, and they raise people to be in that new version, we can actually shift part of our biological coding, shift the way that our DNA manifests on this planet. And so one of those big shifts gets to be the part of us that is attached to the pain, and letting that go. I think that's a massive undertaking, because in my own life, this has taken me years and years of consistent looking at, because I was very much the person who believed that pain was necessary to grow. I fully thought that. And a big reason that I thought that in hindsight is because I'd experienced so much emotional pain and physical pain too, growing up, that it was a way of protecting my heart and saying, oh, my dad used to hit me with belts and things. That was just how I was raised. And I thought everyone got hit like that. And when I found out that they didn't, and then I later on got my dog, and it was the first experience of having something that I felt like was my responsibility in a parental type of role. And the imagining hitting the dog, I just couldn't. And then imagining hitting my child, I couldn't, but I know that that's how I was raised. So it's in me somehow. And it was really painful. It was painful to accept, it has nothing to do with, I wasn't better off because I was hit. I don't actually believe that. I don't necessarily believe I was worse off, other than the emotional wounding and trauma that comes from that thing. But if I believed I was better off, then I'd be sitting here telling you I'm going to hit my kids.
Right.
But I don't believe that I was better off. Yet my dad believed that I would be better off if he hit me. Right. And so I've kind of gone off a little bit here, but the idea is that I told myself that pain leads to my growth. I'm stronger than someone who didn't get hit by their parents. And that's not empirically true, but that's the way that I could rationalize the fact that my dad used to hit me with objects. Like that was my way of protecting my heart and telling me, oh, he was making me stronger. He was loving me the best that he could.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have those stories, right? We all have our wounded selves. And it's almost like at some point in our lives, we reach this space where we want to feel validated for the pain. It's like we've been carrying around the pain for a while, and then all of a sudden we find our voice, we find our truth, we start activating it, and now we want to use it because we want to feel validated, right? And this is something I see a lot. A lot of people end up being coaches because they have their own journeys. They're like, oh, I want to help someone else get out of their pain, but they're still holding on to their pain because they're not approaching their story from this empowered place, right? You can be with your story from this empowered place, or you can be in your story from the wounded place of holding onto it. And there's a very big energetic difference. And that was something that was huge for me, because I think for the first 2 years or at least the first year and a half as a coach, I was really holding on to the wound, because for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a platform where I could be heard and validated after, decades of not being validated for the pain that I had experienced. And the more I shared, the more I released, and the more I healed, because it helped me turn inwards. And now I look at my story and I look at my pain, but it's like, it's detached, like it's not a part of me. Before it was like tumors growing on me. Now I don't feel that.
Yeah. the pain can often become an identity.
Totally. We
Right?
identify ourselves with the pain, and that story is who we are.
100%. And I know some of the health issues that you've gone through in the
Mm-hmm.
past, and I won't speak for you, but I'll speak for myself. When my body was breaking down, and I had 2 surgeries in a year, and I had complications post-surgery on both of them, and there was so much of a desire to, I don't know, be the victim.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
to identify as, oh, I'm the guy, and then create that hero's journey archetype of, oh, I used to be this and this and this and this, but now look at me.
Yeah.
It's somehow more validating.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I don't know, there's an aspect of, I don't know that's more validating, but what there is around it for me is that there are going to be people who are in a situation right now where they want to shift and they don't know that it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
And by hearing about the me who was 73 pounds when I entered high school as a freshman, 73 pounds, 5 feet tall, being, physically hit by his immigrant father growing up, and goes on to win homecoming king and get a scholarship to college, and now blah, 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 blah. Like, that storyline, for some people, they want to hear that because they can relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them hope because they go, oh, that's similar to my story.
Mm-hmm.
They say, wow, Ruby overcame all of this. I can relate to that.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment we become our story, the moment that our identity is the events that happened, I think we invite in the potential for all of the wounded aspects of ourselves still being a part of everything we do, because we're still trying to heal it. By
Mm-hmm.
owning it, that's our way of trying to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a really fine line, because I haven't talked about some of this stuff on a podcast or anything in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I've never done a podcast on my own, the deep dive. I haven't done anything around like my upbringing necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
because I've let go of it in so many ways, and I still do recognize the value in using it as a way to connect to people. And so it's a fine line.
Yeah, it really is. And it's also one that I think is super important not to disregard, because at one point our identity was based in that. And there are times now where, like, I wake up, my identity is completely detached from it. My identity is the identity that of the woman who is leading the mission and the vision that she's leading. But then there are going to be days where I wake up and I've fallen back into the other identity, and it's this constant, like, working on myself and being dedicated to that, and up leveling and reminding myself of the woman I am today versus who I was in the past. So I do believe that there's so much importance in talking about it, not necessarily to create that connection with the audience, but to understand how powerful our minds are when it comes to creating our identities, and for so long we're taught, just by what we see in our upbringings and in the stories we see in the news and media, like, pain sells. Pain, it tracks people. It brings you sympathy. It brings you empathy. It's, talked about. And I feel like everyone is shifting that now, because we're all feeling called to our greater missions and our greater purposes. And we're understanding that in order to fulfill those visions, we need to begin to create that new identity for ourselves.
And I'm seeing so many people now that social media has given everyone a voice.
Yeah.
There are so many people who, when they think about it, I saw this as something showing up in my life now, going through a breakup. The other day, I got a bunch of junk food. I got a donut,
Mm-hmm.
and I follow that donut with a little bit of ice cream. And That's so unlike me. I don't eat like that normally. I especially don't eat those back to back like that.
Right.
But in this, my heart hurts. I'd like to feel better. Unconsciously, I went, sugar will act like a drug and give me that endorphin release, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I took action upon that. It was a real quick fix. In today's age of social media, I'm seeing a lot of people use their pain and their suffering and their stories for a quick fix. They're going to get a bunch of likes, and they're going to get some comments that tell them, you know, oh, we love you so much. We're going to get the comments that say, you're so strong. Thank you for shit. Like, that's a quick fix. And that's scientific, by the way. The comments, the likes, all of that, the dopamine drip. And so similarly, it's like, I'm feeling bad. Let me write a post about being depressed and being a victim and et cetera, so that I can get that feedback that acts like a drug to make me feel better. And so the more that happens, what happens, just same as a drug or sugar or anything, you create an addiction, where now it's anytime you feel that, I'm going to go and write something on social media or put something out to get that feedback. And it becomes a way of coping that is not necessarily healthy. So yes, I see both ends of this. I see people stepping into their empowerment and owning how far they've come in a really beautiful way. And this insidious thing where I can get a lot of people to make me feel better if I post this thing.
Yeah, it's our addictions to other things have now turned to our addictions to social media for validation, for the dopamine hits, for just the acknowledgement of our existence.
Totally. And our social standing is now being measured by or by followers. Right. And it's this whole new dynamic. And I've only recently noticed it because of my proximity to a variety of different people, and seeing what's posted relative to what's going on behind the scenes, and really noticing, wait a second, that's not true. That's not, right. Or that's like a tiny sliver of what's actually going on. Or why is this person saying this thing when the other day I was talking and it was, and so seeing that, I want people to hear me, because while we live in this bubble, Ruby, you and I, with a lot of social media influencers, a lot of human beings on this planet don't share their stories through social media in a really vulnerable, transparent way like that. That's not how they use it. And I want people to understand, when they're listening to this, that social media is a tool, and it can be utilized however you want and with the intention that you put into it. And my plea, if you will, is to really see it as an extension of what you want to be embodying on the planet. So if what you're putting out is victim shit, you're saying to the whole world, I'm a victim. And if you're putting out empowerment shit, you're saying I'm empowered. And if you're putting out empowerment shit or victim shit, when that's not the truth of what's going on for you, if you're super depressed and you're putting out a bunch of stuff about making six figures or whatever it is, because that's what you're painting, you're now putting out the intention of falsity. You are putting out a mask where people can't see you. And so see social media as an extension of who you are, who you actually are. And you're going to start to get some really honest reflections. And then you get this beautiful feedback loop of, this is who I actually am in this moment. This is the truth of me. And so every interaction I have is with people who are responding to me at the deepest level. And that's why I love I love my online tribe. I
Mhm.
have definitely scaled back. I think a lot of the use, I'm actually feeling the call to do a Facebook Live after this because
Mhm.
I haven't done one in a while. But part of this is the journey that I'm personally on. And that looks like claiming the artist in me and less of the coach and teacher. So I'm putting out less content through the avenues that I was before, but that's the authentic version of me. And what I love about you is that I feel like you do the same thing. I
Mhm.
see posts from you that are all over the map, which
Yep.
lets me know that they're authentic. I'm fucking crushing it today, or I am struggling this week,
Mhm.
or hey, I'm not putting up with your bullshit today. Here's a love
Mhm.
punch.
Yeah, exactly. And and for that same reason, I scaled back from, like, I used to post on Instagram regularly 3 times a day. And I stopped. I stopped that about 3 months ago. And now I post maybe once every 2 days, if that, because I've chosen to dive even deeper into my authentic self. I mean, I've always shown up authentically online, but there was this underlying feeling of like, I need to show up. So now I'm just like, fuck it. Like, I don't need to show up. I know my tribe. They know me. I'm good. Like, I don't need to do any of this. There is no need. There's no necessity. And I'm able to show up more in my power as the woman that I am today by not confining myself to these shoulds when it comes to social media and how I want to be perceived. Because this isn't a how do I want to be perceived game. This is like, who am I being? This
Yeah.
is what it's about. It's who I'm being. So Adam, at this point, I'm going to have to say we got to cut this off. But at the same time, like, I feel like we could have gone on for another couple hours.
Totally.
So we went all over the map with this, but I love that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a through line. I mean, we went
I
everywhere.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't think there is, but I think we gave, like, there was a lot of golden nuggets thrown and a lot of insight for people to really reflect on in their own lives. So this might be a little difficult, but at the end of every episode, I like to offer a love punch. And today it's your turn to offer a love punch, something that would sum up our conversation today for our listeners.
Mm. Sum up our conversation. What would sum up our conversation? I believe that your capacity to love others is limited only by your capacity to love yourself.
Mm,
And everything that we've talked about today comes down to, how do you choose to love yourself?
mm,
What does that look like? How does that feel for you? Because no one else can tell you what your self-love looks like. And so I just invite everyone listening to this to really find more ways to love yourself in the ways that feel most joyous.
mm. That's beautiful. Thank you, Adam. And thank you so much for just sharing your energy with our listeners. Why don't you tell them where they can stalk you online?
AdamRoa.com is the hub, ADAMROA.com, and you'll find links to my podcast, The Deep Dive. You'll find links to Facebook, Instagram, Adam.Roa, Twitter, Adam_Roa, YouTube, like, it's all there.
Perfect. That's awesome. Thank you so much. To our listeners, I want to say thank you for joining us on today's episode of Love Punch, where I am challenging thought leaders, influencers, and entrepreneurs like you to make a lasting impact. If you liked this episode with me and Adam, please share it with a friend and don't forget to hit subscribe. If you're feeling a little extra love, drop a review on iTunes. And if you have any questions about today's episode, please reach out to me and Adam on social media. Our links will be in the notes. Thank you again, Adam. And I will see everyone back here next week for a brand new episode of Love Punch.
Much love, everybody.